Morning everybody, Ronan here, hope you're well. I'm going to do a little piece on meetings because basically they're driving everybody crazy, and there seems to be more of them happening instead of less. So to begin with, one of the major issues around meetings is there are too many of them. And then the second issue is that once somebody is in a meeting, they kind of take on a life of their own quite often. So unless that's the purpose of the meeting, to be able to take on a life of its own and explore something creatively, if that is the purpose, then fine. If that isn't the purpose, then it's a real problem. So one of the biggest issues I've seen with companies and with company owners and senior executives, they're talking to me about how they're in so many meetings, they're back to back, half of them are pointless. The other half that they're in could be half as long. Okay, so one of the major things around meetings, and one of the biggest problems with them, is that A players get really pissed off. Excuse the French, but they do. They get really pissed off. A players do, right? They get really upset when they're in too many meetings and when they're in meetings where nothing's happening, because A players want to perform. So how you do meetings and how many meetings you do says a lot about the culture of the company. So if you're doing too many and they're going on for too long, people get despondent. Things don't get done either. You know, you can have like meeting overkill. So how to address it? Well, one of the first things to look at is, where's your company at? Where's your business at? And what speed is it moving at? So for example, you know, you got to know first of all how many meetings to have, which meetings to have to begin with. So one of the first things I like to look at is, are we talking about a high growth company, a high growth operation? Is there a launch going on? Is there a restructuring going on? Okay, is there something major going on in the business? If there is, then the heartbeat of that business is higher than at a time when there's, let's say, just business as usual happening. So when your heartbeat's higher as a business, you need to do more than when it's lower. So for example, if you're training, if you're running a marathon or something, your heartbeat's going to be much higher, and you need, you know, maybe more hydration, maybe you need more food than you would normally take. Maybe you need to train differently, maybe you need to eat differently before and after, all that kind of stuff. So if your business is in high performance mode, then the meetings that you need to have will be different compared to if your business is in business as usual mode. So if your, let's say, heartbeat's pumping faster, your pulse rate is faster, then you need to pulse with that, so you probably have more meetings. And you might have meetings every day or maybe twice a day, but shorter, just to make sure you're on track, everything is happening. So I kind of lump meetings into 4 areas. Are they structural meetings, strategic meetings, tactical meetings, or is it firefighting? Has a problem come up and it's an impromptu meeting? So once you know what you're doing and why you're doing the meeting, here's the key. And I substitute agendas with outcomes. Okay, so kill the agenda and instead put in outcomes. So very often people have an agenda for a meeting and they have, you know, all these points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you go into a meeting room with 7 points like that to discuss, they will all be discussed. I'm not saying that you should not do that. I'm saying that it's wise to question whether or not you need to do that. And if you decide that you do need to do that, you've got 7 points that need to be discussed, at least at the very top have an outcome. Have your first point to be an outcome. And the outcome might say something like, the outcome of this meeting is that we've made a decision on whether to take route A or route B. Or it might be, we've made a decision as to whether we take on a project or not. Or we have an outcome decided upon for anything. Okay, so you make that your number one thing. Because if that's your number one thing, then everything below it can happen much quicker, and it's happening with at least there's a focus. Rather than having an agenda to talk about something, we're having a meeting about restructuring. We're having a meeting about marketing. We're having a meeting about the team. We're having a meeting about projects. We're having a meeting about whatever, okay? that's fine, but have an outcome for the meeting. So if you have an outcome for a meeting, then the meeting can actually finish. It could finish within 10 minutes because you can get your outcome super quickly. And those meetings are much more interesting to A players. A players will turn up to those kinds of meetings and they'll enjoy it because they're focused on something, producing something, making something happen, rather than sitting there just talking and talking and talking. C players, for example, will want to sit down and talk all day because it means they don't have to do any work, and they can probably hide, and they can probably, change the meeting to discuss, the types of muffins that you're going to have at the, someone's birthday next week or whatever. I'm not saying that you don't have your muffins and all that kind of stuff. This is just a piece on how to be outcomes focused with your meetings. You could have at the end any other business, but it's really important to have a purpose for the meeting, an owner for the meeting, and an outcome for the meeting. So this is the next bit is essential. So if you're having a meeting, it's okay for people to come in for 10 minutes. Some people may want to stay there for the whole meeting. Some people might need to stay there for the whole meeting. Some people won't need to. So if you look at a board, for example, a company board, you'll have the directors who will sit down for the duration of the entire meeting, and they'll have topics to discuss, and they will want outcomes for each of those topics. A good board. But you'll probably have an executive director, one or two maybe, on that board, the CEO and maybe somebody else, maybe the CFO or COO or somebody. But aside from that, you'd have people from the company, employees of the company, will come in and present at various times in the board meeting. They'll come in and they'll leave. They probably won't sit there for the whole thing. If it's a 3-hour meeting, they might be there for half an hour. And I think it's okay to do that for any meeting at any level in a company, especially when people are busy. Because sometimes people are sitting there for 25 minutes before they talk for 5 and then sit for another half an hour before they leave. Now, sometimes people need to have that full perspective on a company or on operations or something, but quite often they don't, and quite often they don't want to be there. So I would say have an owner, have a purpose, and have an outcome for the meeting. Then have people come and go as, when, if needed. And I think that would be great for your A players, because if you're running a business and you're watching this, your A players are essential to your business, and you're probably an A player yourself if you're running a business. If you're an executive, a leader in a leadership position, a senior executive, anything like that, the same applies. So only have people who need to be there, allow them to come and go, have an outcome for the meeting, rather than just agendas. If you have an outcome, you can get away with some agenda items. And watch the pulse rate of the business, the heartbeat of the business, because sometimes you need to have more meetings, sometimes you need to have less. And also look at your meetings and go, are they about strategy, are they about tactics, are they just firefighting, and or is it about structure? That's it. I mean, there is a lot more on it, but just a few quick tips maybe. Be outcomes focused. Let people come and go. Have your A players on their game, and it'll be fabulous. One more thing, actually, now that I just think of it, your 1-hour meetings, try have them for 45 minutes instead, and your 2-hour meetings, try have them for 90 minutes, or maybe an hour and 15. Your half-hour meetings, I don't know, sometimes half hour is okay, but you could try 15 minutes, or you could try 20 minutes. Some of your sit-down meetings, try them standing up, etc. But just watch the pulse rate, watch the heartbeat, because you don't want to be in a meeting and then everything just goes like that. Just all the energy drops through the floor. That's not what you want. And especially your A players, they won't hang around for that. If that happens for too long, they will move on. They absolutely will move on, and then you'll be left with C players and B players. And B players are okay because they can have an attitude that will take them to an A player. So that's it. Hope that helps, and hopefully we'll chat again soon. Cheers.